Alright, look. I just wanted to make something more permanent about zombies. A lot of what we have put on the internet kind of sucks or shoehorns all zombies into zombie world, as if that's the best version for the individual subtypes. Sometime around 2018, this might have been true. This no longer is the case, and while we head to head a zombie type deck will always lose to something that just negates zombies like Doom King Baldrock, individually, there is more to do with these archetypes that keeps them as viable as zombie world variants, while also following more to their core identity. So this Shiranui deck aims to do that. While traditional deck lists will just talk through ratios and their effects without regard to why, I want to look at Shiranui's more from a place of deck building history, theory, and the decisions that led to this being the current build, such that will allow for anyone who's actually interested in this deck to recognize the shifts that have happened from when we're recording this now to better adjust to what changes might be needed to be made. I don't want to remake this multiple times through different metas. Shiranuis are a deck that can really be centered around the card Shiranui Solitaire. Up until very recently, this card more or less ended up defining the deck, and because it was also a key card in Zombie World, so too did these archetypes end up pretty much merged in a competition of end boards. So whichever deck had a better end board was going to be the deck that took the identity. Zombie World, with Doom King Baldrock, easily won that fight. But there ended up being a change, and that change ended up being twofold. Chronologically, the release of Squire and Ghost Meets Girl, a Shiranui story, were the first steps to giving this deck its own identity. By itself, these cards weren't great, as the play was essentially to summon Squire, grab Spectral Sword of Shade, the tuner that's level 3. You go from the deck, pull it out, go into Shiranui Squire Saga, their level 7 Synchro, and use the Synchro's effect to banish Squire. That would draw one card and discard one card, and you had better hope that Mizuki was your discard. If it was, congratulations, you could extend. If not, a level 7 Synchro with 2400 attack and no text was your combo. So the second key part was something to go into here, and that was Immortal Dragon, the level 6 zombie synchro that could level modulate by milling a zombie card. Now, Shiranui Squire could pull the original Spectral Sword and go into a Synchro 6, guaranteeing that a Mizuki or another powerful graveyard zombie found its way home. With this piece, Shiranui's came into a place where we could ditch Zombie World and truly rely on their own unique game plan. To be clear, this means that Shiranui Squire is now the de facto normal summon of Shiranuis. But with all zombie decks, they all fall to the inevitability of Ash Blossom. Lacking any special summon starters, zombies have been paralyzed basically into irrelevancy or as a small engine with the exception of exactly Eldritch. All zombie decks now look to resolve that, and we have 6 cards in this deck meant specifically for that goal. Shiranui Story and Vendread Charge. Both require a zombie discard, or in Charge's case, you can send a card from the field to the graveyard, and both special summon a zombie from deck. Charge has 2 targets in this deck. Scar if you have Uni-Zombie, since Uni-Zombie sends 1 goes to 4, gets us 10 stars on the field for Barone. And Core if you have a functioning graveyard. Specifically if Chengshi the Spiritualist is in there, so you can extend with more mills. Shiranui's Story will bring out Solitaire if you haven't gotten into your plays, and Shiranui Samurai if you have something unfortunate happen, like having to discard Solitaire since you can't summon the card you discarded. Smith is also a target, but only when you've really got into your plays and you're making a synchro summon. So you can search something like Shiranui Style Solemnity or Ghost Meets Girl, a masterful Mayakashi Shiranui saga. On rare occasions, Shiranui Spectral Sword of Shade is a viable target if you have all of your Mizukis in your banish zone and you basically have no other way to access them. There's only a few zombies that we haven't really touched on already, and most of them are just graveyard fodder. Mizuki is obvious, revive any zombie. Most of the time you want it to be a synchro boss or Gozuki. Gozuki is our primary way to banish Changshi the Spiritualist, but does double as a normal summon. Due to the fact that we have functionally 9 normal summons, though, 4 of them are special summons and 2 are Gozuki, which are just sending to the graveyard off a luxury mill. Gozuki won't do anything as a normal summon, but it does beat normal summoning Mizuki. Changshi is the best Shiranui card. There's a lot of cards that banish in a Shiranui strategy, so activating and fulfilling that condition is not difficult. It's a free special summon that can mill Mad Mauler and go into Immortal Dragon. That and 6 is very auspicious to get into Barone if you want to. Otherwise, it's a generic mill that comes off a special summon, and if you aren't running at least one, you're wrong. There's a few judgment calls here. Necroface is one. I used to run this card in old Shiranui decks at max copies. It's been at 3 for years now, but it's really only 3 good activatable banishes in this deck. It's Spirit Master, Squire, Solitaire, and 1 copy of Necroface is enough to load up your banish zone. There's really no reason to go into more. You could try to hurt your opponent by having multiple copies, but you're going second. This deck kind of has to because of Shiranui's story. So are you really going to hurt them when they've probably gone through all their one-ofs first? More than likely, you're just going to mill out too many Mizukis, put yourself into a weird situation where all your Mizukis are already banished, and just cry because activating like Squire and Solitaire was not enough to repair what you've done to yourself. Smith is another judgment call. To be clear, Smith is still a brick, but it's a very workable solution as an extender to get Ghost Meets Girl or Solemnity. Solemnity was the only top-end play this deck really has. Like, every combo is kind of low to the ground and trying to counteract the fact that interruption can exist. If you get to Solemnity, your play is to banish Shiranui Solitaire. Shiranui Solitaire now resummons 2 cards because Solemnity counts as the field spell, and you get Shiranui Spectral Sword of Shade off of that, and anything else, it doesn't really matter. Spectral Sword of Shade tributes itself, grabs Mizuki and Shiranui Solitaire, which you just banished, and hey, now you have 3 cards on the field, and one of them's a Mizuki, so once you link them all away, you now have a Mizuki Revive. Nothing really wrong with that. For the most part, the spells here aren't really remarkable. Sarcophagus is an auto-occlude in Shiranui's. Foolish Burial is an auto-include in all zombies. Lightning Storms to board break. Back row's more of an issue for Shiranui monsters than monsters themselves. Shiranui Mayakashi Trap there. You can lock your opponent. You're not going to do it often with this deck. More importantly is the fact that it recovers a banished Synchro and the Icicle Mayakashi, the Link 3. The Link 3 isn't recovered any other way in this deck, so you have 1 chance to get it out and use it again, and that's the trap. Vendread Reorigin is the search off of Scar and part of a Vendread engine that's really light in here. Normally you go a little bit more than this. It requires a Vendread Savior, so basically you set the trap, you tribute your opponent's monster, that counts as a tribute, so Scar in the graveyard is going to come back. It banishes a zombie. Don't banish anything that's going to special summon because you're locking yourself into Vendreads right here. Both of those come back. Ideally, you link them into a Vendread Savior. A Vendread Savior can activate on field to add Reorigin back to hand. Hey, that's a nice loop. But that's the point of it. It's not super important because you are a go second deck. Otherwise, you have Astral, Lightning Storm, 8 Harpy's Feather Duster. There's 9 cards in this deck that are basically flex spots to whatever the meta is currently. View them as 9 out of 43 rather than 3 sets of 3 and 43 cards. Look, you're over 40 cards, but the consistency loss is negligible. You have a large amount of bricks, and you'd rather have more interrupts than not. And anyways, a little bit more of, if you do draw the bricks anyways, that's why we're not going to 50 or 60. your extender spells both discard zombies. So you're not really bricking that hard, anyways. It's just a happy medium where we want to have the cards. We're not going to complain too much about the ratios. There's nothing more to be done about it that doesn't kill where we are. Extra deck is relatively simple. Avenged Savior having 2 cards is because realistically, Reorigin Engine should have 2 saviors, so Savior can recycle a savior if one was removed from the field. Link Rebo is there only for Vendread Core. Otherwise, Core doesn't hit the graveyard off charge alone. Skill Saga Supremacy is pretty awful most of the time, but we do banish a lot of synchros, so on occasions, grabbing like Squire Saga or Shogun Saga is pretty good. I think you grab Felgrand too, if that's possible. It doesn't come up often. Samurai Saga is also really bad, but you do need a 6 outside of Immortal Dragon for when you like mill Mad Mauler and it manipulates the zombie down to a 6 and you have nothing else to do. Squire Saga is specifically for a Squire combo involving Spectral Sword of Shade, which ideally should be a follow-up rather than your starting play now. But 7s are a useful number. You'll come across it every so often. And this is the only readily available zombie card that can actually remove back row outside of Haitian. And Haitian needs to be resummoned from the graveyard, so that's kind of its loss. It's not Haitian, it's the Haitian like equivalent Mayakashi Synchro. Felgrand is great if we have a way to get Yukiona level the Link 3 in the graveyard to like interrupt and banish. It's like Doom King never left. Shogun Saga is our out to Dragoon. Yeah, that sucks. Occasionally just OTKs. You banish like Felgrand, you're up to 5800 attack. Red Eye Zombie Dragon Lord, basically you revive Felgrand off of it. Everything in this deck is kind of centering around Felgrand if you can get it into cycle, and this deck's generally pretty decent at it. Barone is the best zombie synchro in the game. Shiranui Sun Saga is actually a better grind tool than most cards in this deck because it banishes to keep your board alive, so you're like banishing the main deck Shiranuis. Also, its pop is returning all those synchro monsters that you've been banishing over the course of your turn, so you have access to them all again. Lastly, Underworld Goddess is a must because every card in this deck basically targets and or destroys, so having some flexible removal like her, you don't have a real choice. That's the deck, and as some closing thoughts, I would say that both Mayakashis and Shiranuis suffer from a lack of real innovation being given by like content creators and even people who work on these decks themselves. I kind of take the Shiranui story card as a cautionary tale that small communities can overlook powerful shifts in their archetype strategy because they've become so ingrained with what used to work. And even I, in creating this list, spent over half a year with basically all these tools available before realizing the viability of these cards. Only came across it out of boredom with how Shiranuis were being employed like right now. Most of the deck lists are shoehorning in a zombie world, and I thought we could do better. But, at the end of the day, a lot of these specific decks, Shiranuis and Mayakashis, is on me. But there's very few other active deck builders out there. But I do believe it is a cautionary tale worth picking up for other smaller communities as well. We in communities with decks do try to strive for hyper efficiency, and that wheels down to finding what is the general best employment of a strategy, and then for the next couple of years just talking about ratios and the smallest minor changes on it to squeeze out the last bit of win rate. That's great if you're right about what the best deck looks like generically, but communities should strive to have a little bit of inefficiency in their testings just to make sure they're not missing anything. If we do invite people who are actively testing something out that we think at first glance is just bad and give them the chance to show us why, maybe there is something there, and then have more experienced deck builders pick up on it and do something with it, we do have a chance in smaller communities to both keep our deck building fresh, but also potentially uncover things that, while they're not going to push us into meta status, are giving us a better position within the casual field.